So I'm going to be applying this Fat Mat Rattle Trap material, same thing like I did with the doors, to the inside of the trunk first, before I actually start applying my sound deadening material. I'm going to start applying it to the innermost portion, which is that portion right there. Should be really similar to how I did the doors, so really no need for you guys to be watching that. I'm just going to be cutting up strips, applying it, and working my way through. And I guess at certain points I'll keep you guys up to date, just show you how it's progressing or if I found anything challenging. One last piece that causes a lot of vibrations is this piece right here. As you can see, I mean, I'm just tapping it lightly and it is just vibrating like crazy. So with this, it's just clips that you're just going to be basically loosening up like that. And that piece comes right off. So as you can see, I mean, it's pretty much like this plastic rubber. I don't know what that really is, but it's super hard. And it just vibrates all up against that and rattles the entire time. This took a lot longer than I thought it was gonna take. So after about an hour and a half, this is where we're at. Pretty much completed everything from the inner portion right here. And now I can work in a one piece kind of strip going all the way down the trunk. So it should be a lot easier up until I get to doing this portion right here, kind of underneath here, and these kind of sides. And then it's gonna be kind of a pain again, but I'm gonna enjoy taking a little bit of a break right now and working on flat pieces like this one. I think today is one of the hottest, most humid days out there. So if you're gonna be working in the garage, I definitely suggest you buy yourself one of these, just one of those room ACs, pop it out the window and just turn it on and get cool. So this is how it's progressing right now. As you can see, I mean, it's just one big flat piece. I mean, I did have to cut it right there because of the curvature, but now I'm gonna do another piece like that over here on the left. And most of the flooring is going to be done. It's just underneath the wires over there, and then I'm going to have to cut little strips and make sure the coverage area is pretty good. Well, it's time for day 2. Last night I pretty much completed the entire trunk with the rattle trap. I think there are still a few areas that I want to add, but as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to start working on the actual sound deadening material, and this is pretty much what it looks like right now. So let's start working on the rear seats, and hopefully I'll get this thing knocked out and put back together before it starts raining today. So it looks like the easiest thing to do with this one as well is just cut out strips and just lay them down up until I get it done. So just like everything else so far, this is moving along quite painfully. It's not fast by any means. You're gonna have to cut your strips, lay them down slowly. And the only thing I keep thinking about right now is as soon as I'm done with this, then I gotta restart and do everything with the actual sound dampening material. So I have about another probably half an hour to finish off this side over here. And as soon as I'm done, hopefully I'll have enough material to cover the top, which it's starting to look like I'm about to run out of material. I honestly thought an additional 50 square feet would have been enough, but it looks like in order to finish the floors, I'm gonna have to order yet another 50-foot roll, and hopefully that'll come in before next weekend when I'm actually planning on doing this. Just so you guys know, you're always working in such a cramped spot. Last night I had to actually apply some icy hot. It's definitely back-breaking work, and the guys that do this all the time, I mean, I definitely commend you. So after another 30 minutes or so, finally completed this side, and I can finally start laying down the material on the floor. But before I do that, I kind of measured out how much material I have left, and it looks like I will have enough to do the top piece up there and get that done. Just by looking at this top piece, just how difficult it was to unclip everything, I don't think that I'm going to be laying down as heavy of a material up here. But what I will do is I'll add a little bit more extra padding on the inside of the plastic pieces that I think needed, and just put some strips here and there. And then of course try to minimize any kind of rattle from any of the wiring. Depending on how much material I have left over, most likely I'll lay it down heavy from the bottom, and then also the soundproofing material as well. I'll lay it heavy from the bottom, so hopefully that'll eliminate most of the rattles, as well as dampen the sound coming from the back of the trunk, especially the wheel well area. So I have a feeling this will all just be a huge balancing act, how much material can actually lay down and have everything clip back in properly. But I am on the last part of applying this Rattletrap material, so let's get to work, let's get this thing done, and let's move on to phase 2. So I know a few of you guys may be a little worried about working around the airbag, and I know in the previous video I showed you how to remove a couple of the clips without you actually touching anything, so that you're cautious. And I was cautious myself up until my wife came in and started saying like, hey, you know, and just punching the airbag, like saying, hey, what's this thing over here? I said the one thing that you should not hit like that, you're actually just beating the crap out of it. And yeah, as you can see, your airbag's still intact and it didn't explode, so we're good to go. You don't have to be that worried, but I still suggest you're cautious. It's about the coverage that I kind of wanted to get. Like I said, I didn't want to cover everything. Anytime there was a hole,
either cut really around it or just kind of left it completely open, as you can see. And then I added a little bit of additional material over the wires, which I'm planning on doing everywhere anyways, but I'm about to start putting this thing back together before I apply some additional material to the inside of the plastic. But as you can see already, most of the rattles have been gone. There are these two wires right here that were the biggest culprits, but yeah, for the most part, like I said, all the rattles are gone. The only other rattling that's happening, I think, is from the bottom. So I'm gonna have to add some insulation material, this rattle trap from the bottom, in order to get it properly right.
So what I think I'm gonna do with that plastic piece is just use some of this material that I actually took off from the inside of my door. It's actually really nice, kind of feels real nice. I don't think it's gonna tear away, and then I'm just gonna use a little bit of duct tape to tape the edges down. And I think around any single plastic inside there that could be rattling, I think this is going to eliminate it. Now if you take a look, you'll see that Subaru tried to add a little bit of foam to eliminate that kind of rattling, but I think that foam has just dissipated, and I think that's why you start off not having any rattles, and then over time it actually progresses and your car is just rattling from the back to the point where you have to stick something back there just to stop it from driving you crazy. So I pretty much finished applying as much material as I could. I went over every single area that I saw where they applied the material, and I reapplied over it, as well as a couple areas, especially on the inside portion right here, where I kind of beefed it up a little bit just because it will be going up against that metal, and I don't think they did a good enough job applying any kind of protection whatsoever. But the rear, that should definitely help out. Like I said, those other pieces definitely got torn to shreds, so hopefully these won't, and I will be rattle free from this point on. Before I continue laying down any kind of additional material on the floor, I am going to put this piece back into its original spot, just so I can feel like I've actually accomplished something so far. And before I put in the taillight, I am going to apply a little bit of material on this piece itself, just because I noticed that they did it themselves. So might as well try to eliminate any kind of potential rattle for the future. Don't want to be taking this thing apart ever again. And just kind of looking at it, this definitely seems like it's something that will definitely rattle. So this is probably the most excruciating process of it so far, just trying to line up all the holes. As you can tell by how drenched I am probably on the camera, it's time for shirt number 4, and it was definitely an excruciating process to complete that task. But it's in right now. I lined up all the holes. I knew that the clips definitely needed to go through. I knew what needed to be at the bottom and roughly where they were. So it was just basically feeling underneath, trying to line them up properly, and then pushing them down as they lined up. Once they did line up, everything else kind of sat in place. But now that everything's back on, there are a couple of other areas that I'm definitely gonna have to touch up just slightly. And that's basically right behind the rear seat where the metal portion meets the plastic. I will definitely have to add a little bit of extra material right there, just to prevent any kind of additional rattling that I think may occur. So it's finally time to start applying this piece, this thick piece. So I was trying to figure out exactly how I'm gonna approach this. I think I'm just gonna cut out some strips and basically approach it that way. And it seems like the easiest way is with scissors instead of going with the razor blade like what I've been doing so far. And it cuts pretty neatly, so that's what I'm gonna do. Slide it in here, test it out, see how it applies. If I need to readjust and cut smaller, little thinner strips, I will. And there it is, trunk is complete. Honestly, this material is super thick, and a few areas it kind of doubled up a little bit, like on this rear side over here, and just some of the joints. But I laid down as much as I think needed to be laid down. I didn't go completely perfect like I did with the Rattletrap material, but I think this is going to be good enough, and I think this is going to eliminate a lot of noise. I can't believe how good this material definitely feels. So now it's just time to put everything back together in the trunk, and then lay down a sheet of this on underneath the front or the rear seat, and put back together the remainder of the car. And then next week work on the floorboards under the front seats, and that'll be it. The assembly is coming along quite smoothly, surprisingly. I thought there would be a lot more hiccups, but everything seems to be fitting properly as long as you leave yourself enough space where basically the clips are going to go. As long as you don't try to be too tight around the hole, everything's going to be good. For the trunk, I applied just a few pieces on the inside. I mean, Rattletrap, I mean, it will prevent any kind of rattling. You don't have to go completely berserk. But I did apply a big piece to the back right here just to eliminate any extra kind of noise. What I may end up doing right now on top of this actually is adding a little bit more of that foam material that I got from the inside of the door, pop it back on, and I think the rear trunk will never rattle again. So of course, just like with everything else, I had to do it a little overkill. So I applied that sound deadening material. I figured from this area nothing is being blocked as much as I did from the bottom. I wanted to do a little bit from the back as well. So hopefully now this fits properly. I think it should. I'm pretty sure that, yep, I'm able to line up the holes. So yeah, everything should fit on there quite easily, and no more rattle, and even as a bonus, reduce sound. So just like the trunk, nothing special with the back seat. I'm just gonna lay down some material across and start putting the remainder of the stuff back together. I'm really excited to test it out to see how much of a difference just doing the trunk and the rear seats will make. So there we have it, pretty much project complete. Now it's just time to put back, you know, some of the trim back together, and of course the rear seat. But what I ended up doing right here is just laying one big piece, unlike the Rattletrap material that, you know, I added pieces here and there so that I can avoid the wiring. As you can see, I actually ended up covering all the wiring right here, just because if I ever need to get to the wiring underneath, I can actually cut off portions of this, strip it apart. Will it make a mess? Sure, but it's not like the Rattletrap material where it's just inaccessible completely. If I was to try to do this right here, right now, it just would not work properly, I think, as it was intended. So that's why I decided to just go ahead and lay over all the wiring as is. So now let's just go ahead and put the rest of the stuff back together and take it for a drive, see what it sounds like.